William was right that Harry cannot keep his goddamn mouth shut.
I don't think he's an asset to the family. I believe he's a threat.
Good evening, Your Majesties. Good evening, Windsor.
Harry doesn't have intentions that are going to benefit the royal family.
Picture Prince William in a completely different light than the calm, composed future king everyone assumed he was. Because in this version of events, he doesn't just stay the quiet big brother anymore. He shifts into something far more calculated, colder and politically sharp, like a man who suddenly stopped reacting and started planning every move like a chess master playing for the entire monarchy's survival. What once looked like patience now feels more like restraint under pressure. And in this telling, William is no longer just watching the chaos unfold around Harry and Meghan. He is studying it, tracking every interview, every deal, every headline, like pieces on a board that are slowly getting too dangerous to ignore. And from that perspective, the transformation is dramatic, almost cinematic, because the calm brother narrative flips completely when he is described as the royal version of Thanos, not literally snapping fingers in fantasy, but symbolically cutting ties that threaten the structure of the crown itself. Snapping Harry and Meghan out of the royal framework becomes less of an emotional reaction and more of a strategic removal, like ejecting instability from an institution that has survived for centuries. No cape, no crown theatrics, just a blunt internal decision powered by frustration, pressure, and institutional survival instincts. And the tone around it isn't soft either. It carries that exhausted, enough is enough energy, the kind that builds slowly over years of interviews, documentaries, public statements, and media cycles that the palace could never fully control. For years, the royal institution tried to maintain a careful balance, playing polite.
Harry is trying to create more problems between Prince William and King Charles. And I truly believe this.
Did you make Kate cry?
No, the reverse happened.
Even while explosive moments kept landing one after another, from high-profile interviews to global streaming deals that turned private tensions into public content consumed by millions across the world. Oprah interviews opened emotional floodgates that the palace had to respond to indirectly. Netflix productions turned royal life into structured storytelling that blurred the line between reality and narrative, and Meghan's podcast discussions added another layer by framing royal experience through a deeply personal and often critical lens. Even when things were managed, nothing truly stayed contained, because every attempt at silence seemed to trigger another wave of global attention. And William, in this version of the story, is no longer blind to that pattern. He's watching it stack up like pressure in a sealed system, until one morning, the reaction inside that system turns from tolerance into a complete mental shift, where the situation is no longer viewed as family drama, but as institutional risk management. And that's where the narrative sharpens again, because the idea of him waking up and mentally hitting delete account, blocked, restricted, isn't about literal action. It's about symbolic separation from chaos he no longer wants influencing the crown's future direction. At this stage, it's no longer framed as family tea or internal disagreement. It becomes something bigger, colder, more structured, like governance decisions disguised as personal fallout. That's where the so-called three-step master plan enters the story, not as an official document, but as a narrative representation of escalating response. First stripping titles, then cutting access.
Going into the criticism of William for carrying out less numbers of engagements than his father. We don't need you, Prince Harry.
Apparently for me, that doesn't matter.
Everything that Harry is trying to do only benefits Harry.
Then erasing influence from royal proximity altogether. Each step escalates in severity, not just socially, but symbolically, because titles represent identity, access represents connection, and visibility represents influence in the public sphere. And the way it's described, like freezing them out or removing them like leftovers, adds to the emotional tone of detachment, where familiarity is replaced with distance and protocol replaces personal bonds. By the final stage, even digital presence is described in exaggerated terms, as if search visibility and media relevance itself becomes part of the conflict, reflecting how modern royalty isn't just about palaces anymore, It's also about perception, branding, and global attention cycles. But the narrative twist always pulls back further, suggesting this didn't begin with interviews or memoirs, but with a symbolic early fracture point that people overlooked, something as simple as a moment during a royal wedding and the interpretation of a missed gesture. That single moment becomes loaded with meaning in this retelling, not because of the action itself, but because of what it is believed to represent within royal tradition, where etiquette isn't just manners but institutional language. And from there, the story expands outward again into the global phase of Harry and Meghan's post-royal life, where California becomes the backdrop of reinvention, branding, and media expansion. What looks like a peaceful lifestyle on the surface, green juice mornings, privacy attempts, and creative projects, is reframed as something far more strategic in public perception.
Trump is far more interested in getting close to William and Catherine than he is any other member of the royal family.
Harry can't be trusted. He's always going to do something to cross that line.
Almost like building a parallel media empire outside royal influence. William, in this interpretation, is no longer passive. He's aware, alert, and increasingly interpreting every move as part of a larger pattern of public storytelling that competes with royal narrative control. Then the Netflix documentary phase enters as a major escalation point, reframed not just as storytelling, but as competing narrative architecture, where royal life itself becomes subject matter for global audiences. Within this framing, even how family members are portrayed becomes symbolic tension, with contrast between tradition and personal experience being amplified for emotional impact. The Spotify deal is positioned similarly, not just as a business agreement, but as a moment where expectations of success collided with public criticism and industry backlash, creating reputational strain rather than stable influence. And then the Oprah interview is treated as the turning point where private discussions became global discourse, shifting royal conflicts from internal channels into worldwide media conversations. At that point, everything becomes interconnected. Interviews, podcasts, memoirs, forming a continuous media loop that the palace struggles to counter without engaging publicly. Inside the royal institution, that creates a psychological shift, where silence is no longer seen as safety, but as vulnerability, because every silence risks being filled by external narratives. And that's where William's transformation in this story deepens further, because he is no longer reacting emotionally, he is reacting structurally, viewing every move through the lens of long-term institutional stability.
I was doing an interview to offer them a platform to tell their story about why they left. And that was my number one intention, was just clarity on why did you leave? And so some of the things that were revealed in that interview came as a surprise to me. And those surprises are now referred to as bombshells.
The idea of strategy replacing emotion becomes central here, where decisions are no longer framed as family disagreements, but as preservation tactics for the monarchy's future image. Even conversations inside the palace are reframed as high-level strategic meetings rather than casual discussions, especially when senior royals are involved in evaluating how to respond to ongoing public narratives. By this point, the tone shifts into a colder, more formal atmosphere, where every option is weighed carefully, and every potential outcome is measured against public perception and institutional survival. And as the tension escalates, the story leads directly into those closed-door discussions where senior members gather in private, away from media, away from leaks, away from public interpretation. Inside that environment, the atmosphere is described as tense and heavy, not casual or emotional, but deliberate and restrained, where every word carries institutional weight. William's entrance in that setting is portrayed as decisive, not uncertain, reflecting a shift from emotional brother to strategic decision-maker within the royal framework. And that final idea lands hard again, the transition from family dynamics into institutional thinking, where personal relationships are no longer the primary focus, and the monarchy's stability becomes the central priority shaping every conversation. This is where the tension locks in fully, because in this interpretation, it is no longer about reconciliation alone. It is about structure, survival, and control of narrative direction at the highest level. And it all circles back into that final mindset shift where loyalty to institution overrides emotional ties and the dividing line becomes unmistakably clear. This is business, not brotherhood. Second right, when he started talking, you could already feel the shift in the room, because when Prince William laid out his plan, it didn't come off like a suggestion. It didn't sound like something open for debate. It landed like a final call that was already decided behind the scenes. Even King Charles III reportedly felt that weight instantly. People always labelled William as the quiet one, the serious one, the guy who just sticks to the rules. But this moment, this was different energy. This was sharp, controlled, and fully locked in. No notes, no slides, no actual PowerPoint. But you could tell everything was mapped out in his head like a clean strategy, the kind where every move is already calculated, every outcome already considered, and there's zero hesitation left. And the first thing he went straight for? Titles. Not loud, not dramatic, just direct and precise. Take away Duke, take away Duchess, remove the HRH styling, and suddenly Prince Harry and Meghan Markle don't stand in the same position anymore. Because those titles aren't just decoration. They carry influence, recognition, leverage, and access all in one package. Strip that away, and everything shifts overnight. From global royal figures to just another high-profile couple trying to hold attention in a crowded celebrity space. It's like pulling the signal from a smart system. Everything still looks the same on the outside, but the power behind it? Gone. And William didn't stop there. Not even for a second. He moved straight into the next level. Access. Because in that world, access is everything. No more automatic invitations, no more behind-the-scenes privileges, no more walking into rooms where doors used to open instantly. If Harry steps into the UK now, it doesn't feel like a prince returning home. It feels structured, controlled, almost like he's navigating a space that used to be his. The tone changes completely. From insider to outsider, from family to formal boundaries. And then came the coldest part of the entire strategy, the part that didn't need noise to hit hard. Silence, no reactions, no public back and forth, no feeding headlines, just a slow, controlled pullback that removes attention, visibility, and momentum over time. That's what makes it hit different, because you can't argue with silence. You can't fight something that refuses to engage. It's not a battle. It's a fade. And that kind of move, it's calculated in a way people don't expect. Everyone thought there would be shouting, public clashes, dramatic moments, but instead it was absence, an absence that reshapes everything quietly but powerfully. But here's where things take a sharper turn, because while the strategy was aimed at both, the impact didn't land the same way. For Meghan Markle, the shift hit on a completely different level. She stepped into a world where image is everything, where positioning drives opportunities, where perception controls how far you go. And those royal ties, they weren't just background details. They were part of what made everything hit bigger, louder, stronger. Take that away, and suddenly the spotlight doesn't feel as stable. Projects that once looked guaranteed start facing more pressure. The podcast Archetypes, it came in with buzz, attention, curiosity, but that momentum didn't last the way people expected. The Netflix docuseries, huge opening numbers, massive interest, but once the first wave passed, the energy dropped quicker than expected, and those big deals that once rolled in smooth, they didn't feel as automatic anymore, because in that industry, perception is everything. And when perception shifts, leverage shifts right along with it. That's when it became clear. Titles weren't just symbolic, they were branding gold. At the same time, the palace didn't need loud announcements to make their moves. Schedules tightened up. Appearances became more controlled. Interactions, limited, measured, and carefully handled. When Prince Harry came back for visits, the difference wasn't subtle at all. No relaxed family moments, no casual tea, no easy smiles for cameras. Everything felt structured, every movement intentional, every absence louder than presence. Doors didn't slam shut, they just didn't open. And that sends a message that doesn't need explaining. Access denied, caught right in the middle of all this. Catherine, Princess of Wales, the one known for balance, for keeping things steady, for smoothing tension when things get complicated. But this situation, there was no easy middle ground. On one side, family ties. On the other, responsibility to the institution. And when those two collide, something has to give. Standing with William meant protecting the structure, but it also meant accepting distance where there used to be connection. And that's where things started feeling permanent, because once those lines are drawn clearly, they don't blur easily. Then came the moment that made everything official. King Charles III stopped trying to fix it. For years, he leaned toward patience, toward giving second chances, toward hoping time would smooth everything out. He stayed calm through interviews, through headlines, through public pressure that could have easily exploded. But after Balmoral, everything changed. No more soft approach, no more quiet mediation behind the scenes. This time, he backed William fully. No hesitation, no second guessing, just full alignment. And that's what made it real. Because when the king steps away from trying to repair things, it signals something bigger. It means the focus has shifted from relationships to preservation, from emotions to structure, from family ties to institutional survival. From that point on, the roles changed completely. Harry and Meghan weren't operating in that royal space anymore. Not active, not part-time, not somewhere in between. Just separate, private individuals with public attention, but without that same internal connection. And inside those palace walls, the message couldn't have been clearer. The monarchy comes first. No exceptions, no matter how personal it gets. Now people are split on how they see William in all this. Some see a strategist, someone willing to make the hardest calls, even when it involves his own brother. Others see a protector, someone holding the line so centuries of tradition don't turn into public spectacle. Either way, his role has completely changed. He's not just the older brother anymore. He's the one shaping what comes next. And just like that, what started as tension turned into something way bigger. This isn't awkward family dinners anymore. This feels like a full shift in how everything operates. William stands firm. Charles stands behind him. And that gap, it's not closing anytime soon. Now, the real question isn't just about what already happened. It's about what happens next. Do Prince Harry and Meghan Markle rebuild completely outside that system? Do they reshape their identity without that royal connection being front and centre? Do they double down on media, storytelling, and public platforms to keep their momentum alive? Or does the spotlight slowly shift somewhere else as time moves forward? Because one thing is clear, the script flipped. And it didn't flip quietly. It flipped in a way that changed everything moving forward. And here's where it gets even deeper. Because behind all of this, there was one moment, one demand, something Prince Harry reportedly pushed that caught King Charles III completely off guard. And once you hear that part, everything about William's stance starts making even more sense. It fills in gaps, it adds context, it explains why things shifted from patience to finality. I already broke that down in another video, and it connects directly to everything you just heard here. So if you want the full picture, go check that out right after this, because it ties everything together in a way most people missed. And if you made it this far, you already know this story keeps getting deeper and more intense. So don't just sit back quietly. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let me know how you see this playing out. Hit that like button if this breakdown gave you a new perspective, and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next.